So good morning, and as always, thank you all for coming. So I want everybody to meet Josh Davidsburg and Muffy Blake Stephyns and Daniel Stephyns. Both of them are here, I think. Is that right? Muffy and Daniel.
Muffy's behind closed doors.
Muffy is in hiding, but completely made up, right? I just wanted to thank you so much for coming. Anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Joanne Butcher, and I have this organization, Filmmaker Success, and we've been doing this series, The Filmmaker's Life, and interviewing filmmakers about what it's like to live as a filmmaker, work as a filmmaker. And anybody who wants to talk to me about working with me, we'll put that info in the chat. And hopefully we'll have a few things that we'll learn today. I did not meet Josh or Daniel until January of this year. And Josh and I had been, emailing back and forth, but I ended up being a last minute guest in the condo that we rented in Park City.
We were roommates.
We were roommates. And Josh is the director of the film Queen of the Capitol, which was screening at Slam Dance. And so we got to hang out. We didn't know each other, but we were all sleeping together. So, that's the way filmmaking goes. And that's new. That's because I have a new computer and it's not quite set up right properly. So we spent probably a week together in the snow in Park City, and it was just so much fun. It was a ridiculous amount of fun.
It was a blast. One of the most amazing experiences of my life.
Yes. So, oh my God. I'm going to have to fix that. So, yeah, we had the best time. But I like to not start there. I like to not start with the recent amazing success that you've had with this film. And I'd like to go back. And I'm going to start with you, Josh. So when was the first time you realized you wanted to make films?
So I've always wanted to make films, and I've always been really interested in documentaries more than the narrative or scripted. So when I know everybody has this similar type of story. When I was in middle school, my parents bought us a camcorder, right? Mini DV, not mini DV. It was like before mini DV. It was like mini VHS, and I remember an AP US history assignment. We did, write an essay on something in history, and my group chose the Beatles. And instead of doing a written assignment, I was like, why don't we go out and shoot a video? And we went out in downtown Annapolis and stopped tourists and people and asked them their thoughts on the Beatles. And I brought it back home. I had two VCRs set up, hooked one into the other, and I hit play on one and record on the other, and that's how I cut the sound bites.
Yes.
And I got an A on it, so I don't think I got an A because it was really good. I think I got an A because it was different. But my dad was a TV reporter for a long time, actually his whole life, and I always in high school I always wanted to either go into filmmaking or TV journalism, and I ended up going the TV journalism route. I was a reporter for a TV station out in Salisbury, Maryland, and Fort Myers, Florida, and WBAL in Baltimore, Maryland Public Television. And when the economy crashed in 2008, I got a job doing PR, and I hated writing press releases. So I borrowed a camera and shot an event, and that's where I really learned how to shoot and edit. And then I got a job teaching full-time at the University of Maryland. I'm a full-time senior lecturer, do video production and journalism. and that gave me the time to go out and do documentary production, and that's really where I started into film. I've always wanted to go that direction, but this really gave me the opportunity to do it.
So you were super young then, super young. And do you think that maybe came from having your father being a reporter and just seeing that this was a regular, normal world?
Yeah, I mean, I used to follow him around when I was little. He used to take me out onto stories, and you know, I really started to learn how to write by following him around. And he used to, as a side job, do some stringing for Reuters when they had their kind of their own version of the AP wire. And he used to give me some of those to write. And so I would write those. And I just kind of always knew I either wanted to go into directing and film production or TV journalism. And documentary is like the perfect, you know, it's right in the middle of that Venn diagram.
Mm-hmm. Great. So Daniel, you know, you came to film a little bit like a wibbly wobbly way.
Absolutely nothing that you just heard from Josh has anything to do with me.
How did you get to be a film star?
I was born and raised in a small town in northern Missouri. Always had an interest in theater and singing. That evolved into as I began to discover my sexuality and interest in drag. Hung around some drag queens, then eventually began doing drag performing in central Missouri.
Wait, I just have to ask, what was that like to be doing drag in central Missouri? Now I know how to actually say it.
It was very different. I opened my shows with a bucket of KFC chicken on my head. And ate chicken legs while I did my opening number. So yeah, life is, that is not what Muffy does now. But very much my drag had always been campy comedy. Being raised in the Southern Baptist Church, my drag has always been kind of a personal way of therapy about the things I didn't like hearing in church, that I didn't agree with. And then in 2006, from an early age, from the time I was roughly, I would say 11, 12 or so, I've been involved in government of some form. Started off as an intern when I was, I believe, 11 or 12 years old. Eventually, while I was in college, was working as a legislative aide in the Missouri House of Representatives. Became a chief of staff in the Missouri House. Eventually went to become director of elections for the Missouri Secretary of State. And then after college, moved over from, after doing 4 years in the Secretary of State's office, went to moving and doing unemployment insurance law for the Department of Labor. 9 years later gets me to DC. There was a job opening in DC that that did double my salary at the time. And so I bid at it, called the drag children and grandchildren in and said, your mother's moving to DC. Here's my shit. Take it. I'm not gonna do drag again.
Oh.
And a few years later.
Why? Because you thought, oh, I've got the big job now. I'm not going to have time. I don't want to do it. Why did you?
It was a combination of the time, but also having made many a trip to DC. DC has always had, as the film discusses, a long history of drag. Mm-hmm. There's a number of queens that were well established in the community already when I moved out here. And to break into the community, I just like, that's not going to happen. So I'll just focus elsewhere. One of my drag mothers did just come across some Facebook images of me in drag in the past, and that became kind of one of her little missions. She was going to put me back in a gown, and she did. And when I decided if I was going to actually do it, then I needed a gimmick. And so my gimmick was going to be big hair. And so the big hair is always kind of goes back to days as a child, with that's what the little ladies always wore, was the big hair. And so not many drag queens in DC at the time were doing big hair. And that was my thing. And that's, I think, probably the link up actually between Josh and I, is one of his students was sent out to do a project for her class. And as she says that she saw me from 2 blocks away, and came up to me and asked about doing, first was to do an article, because I think they had to do so many articles, and then also they had to then also do a documentary short from beginning to end. And she took my information afterwards and called me later and asked if she could instead film me and use me as her documentary short and subject. So I said, sure, why not? So this entire thing in the beginning was, sure, it's someone with a camera volunteering to follow me around. Why not?
Why not?
And then I'll let Josh tell the story more about how the actual spring from the students into the film at large took place.
I do want to just stop for a moment and just make a note, like everybody, all filmmakers, make a note. Something visually interesting,
Absolutely.
because the visual, I would think that she saw you from 2 blocks away, but it's only then getting to know you and working on the article and then the short and everything that she would find out that she actually had an interesting character, because that's a different level, but to have something visually interesting, I think is like, woohoo, key.
So that video that she brought back, so they had to put together basically a documentary short. And this is, the first time with a camera, first time out shooting.
What were the parameters? Were there any other parameters? What were the parameters of the short?
They had to find an interesting character, an interesting person to do, a short on. This was, so came back and the interview looked beautiful. And I was like, this is really great. It's so well lit. And she was like, yeah, Muffy told me where to put the light. It was the most beautifully lit interview I've ever gotten from a class of like first level students.
Wow. Nice. Yeah, because the theater people know lighting, right?
And
Correct.
Muffy would not let her have bad lighting on that interview.
Right.
So
as opposed to the bad lighting I have during this interview.
Right. Zoom lighting is always bad lighting.
Right. Yeah. So basically the genesis from that was I was talking to my students after class one day, and they asked me what I wanted to do beyond teaching. And I said, I always wanted to make a documentary. And the student Brandy raised her hand and said, why don't we do one on Muffy? And so she set up a meeting with Muffy. And Muffy told me all about the Imperial Court, which is the organization that she's a member of, and all the good that they do in the community. And then she told me about the Academy and the history of the Academy in Washington. And at that moment, I knew that we had a documentary. I didn't want to just do another drag documentary, but this really...
What does that mean, just another drag documentary? Because now that you're an expert in drag documentary, what does that mean? Because I know that you've run into some issues around this. Like, so what does it mean when you say just another drag documentary?
Well, I think whenever you're doing a documentary, you really need to focus your idea, right? So if I was just doing a documentary on just a drag queen in Annapolis, there are so many of those out there, and how would my documentary stand out against, documentaries like Paris is Burning, and and I'm not comparing my documentary to Paris is Burning, but everybody has a camera right now. Everybody has access to Premiere and Final Cut, and DaVinci Resolve is free. I love it that it's democratized documentary. But on the same hand, like, you have to do so. You need something that'll make your documentary stand out. And doing a generic subject, a documentary on a generic subject, it's going to be harder to raise money. It's going to be harder to get into film festivals. But doing something more specific, like a government bureaucrat by day, a drag queen who uses drag to raise money for charity and does amazing things in the community, I think makes it stand out. I mean, you really have to think of your log line from the very beginning before you start shooting.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. Thank you for saying that.
And I found it helps. And I don't know if this is something that we talked about in the condo in Park City, but I found it helps, even if you haven't started applying for grants yet, to do that documentary core grant, because it'll help you focus. It'll help you kind of think through, is this something that I can raise money for? Is this something that will get into film festivals? If this is something that a distributor will pick up, if that's the route you want to go, or is this something that we could do community screenings for, if that's the route you want to go? So, you really need to think through distribution even before you start shooting. And talking to Muffy kind of made that easy because of all the amazing things that she does in the community.
Yes. So Muffy, how did you manage all of this? Because one of the things that I'm really interested in is, how do filmmakers, live their lives and support themselves? So in your case, you have a big full-time job, so how did you then manage to balance all of that with, becoming a film star?
And this part of me thinks every time I say this that I'm being somewhat disrespectful when I say it this way, but it's the honest truth. When this was approached as an idea, I never thought there was going to be a film. I was a drag queen being offered a paparazzi for a year. Sure, I have a group of cameramen come and follow me into every bar that I go into for a year. Sure, piss off the other drag queens. That's the raw, honest answer of it, what it was at that point in time.
So you didn't even see it as being something that was going to add to how much work you had to do.
Yeah, I mean, and that the actual the end product, never imagined me that there would be one, and the stuff, all of the activities associated with the end product never entered into my mind at that point in time.
Right.
Josh,
people following me with a camera, I'm doing my thing anyway. So
right, the three students that were primarily the group that assisted Josh, and then also his brother and a few others, they all made, for everyone, I think a common thread that everyone that was filmed as part of this was that they made being filmed very easy to be done. It didn't seem like you didn't have to learn any lines. You just were able to be yourself.
Right.
And I'm sure probably the degree to which we just undressed and dressed in front of them very well may have opened some startling eyes at times. But because we just did our day as if it was the middle of a show, we've got to go out of 4 different outfits, throw it on and move on to the next thing. And I hope you're catching the film, because that's your job. When it got to be 4 years later or 3.5 years later, and he said, I have a rough cut, then it was, oh shit, what did I say?
What did you think at that point? What did you, when you realized, oh, these people might actually finish this film, what were you worried about?
I don't know that I was worried about anything, other than I did wonder what I'd said on film. I'm very much a camp queen who I do the witty insult and come back at you. And so I was almost sure that there were things that I said, and I'm sure that on some of that tape that's not anywhere in the film, I'm probably glad it's not in the film, that I have no doubt whatsoever. But I think it was just, other than the one comment that it was a true comment. There's nothing that is in the film that is not how I truly believe. There was one comment that ended up in the final cut of the film that I did have to talk to my mother first because I knew she wasn't going to like it. And I suspect that there's probably another sentence about my stepmother that she probably wouldn't like, but I don't think my stepmother's ever going to watch this film. One of the two things that would probably make me the happiest would be for my father to watch the film and to see me perform live. I don't think either of those two things are going to ever happen while I'm on this earth. He's very much a supporter of me personally, and very much a supporter of the same political candidates that I vote for. He's a conservative farmer from North Missouri, salt of the earth kind of guy, and the idea of drag is not something that has not warmed 1 degree. I do continually infuse it into every conversation that I have when there's something happening in the near future around the phone call. But that's something that I know for a fact he has no desire for. Those two comments, I have never even prepped my stepmother for that comment because I know she ain't gonna watch the film.
Right.
I did prep my biological mother, and I'm glad I did because she wasn't fond of the comment. But I hate my middle name. I'm named after her brother. And it says, I'm filling out the application, and I go, Daniel Laverne. Oh, I hate that name. Hayes.
It's one of my favorite.
And it is completely honest. I hate my middle name. I love my middle initial. L is a wonderful initial to be able to make nice, fancy signatures with. But it is if I've been called, hey, Laverne, where's Shirley once, I've heard it 1,000 times. I would come back to the locker in high school, and there would be the big L's taped to my locker. Have no desire to anything with the word Laverne spelled out have anything to do with me. And sure enough, I said it and he caught it.
There are so many things that you just said I want to come back to, but I want to take one thing you said and ask Josh. So you said about you didn't have to like learn lines or anything, you just had to be yourself. And I just wonder from Josh, how do you work with your subjects so that they can be themselves? I mean, I think Daniel is kind of a real expert at being himself, I'd have to say. It's a very special subject, but how do you work that?
So, I come from a real journalism background, not so much filmmaking background. So I don't do much in the way of prepping them. We definitely had a bunch of conversations beforehand about the direction of the film, that I was taking a real journalistic approach to it, that I would, show them the film before it was done, but they don't have editorial control over it. But really it's just trying to make them feel comfortable when you're out there filming. Very small crew on this. It was a lot of the shoots, it was me and one of my students. I recruited 4 other students to kind of help out here and there. And 3 of them to come out as like co-producers and help with cinematography and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, it was 1 or 2, maybe 3 of us out there, and we just tried to blend in. It's a lot easier to blend in when you're at the bar and the drag queens are performing, and you can kind of like blend in with the audience. But then when you're at their homes and Daniel is filling out application to be Empress, just kind of have to be as part of the furniture, basically, if we can. We still like to throw out some questions and stuff and talk and make them feel comfortable. But for the most part, we didn't do any prepping or, directing or anything of our subjects, just kind of directing of crews.
There was kind of like, I think a paragraph, if you would, kind of sort of a spoken paragraph to us each time there was a day of filming, where this is what we're hoping to get out of this day of filming. Sometimes what unfolded during that day probably worked for what he was hoping for, and some days I'm sure it didn't. But it was basically, I let him know what this is, the timeline of what I'm going to be doing over the next 14 months. It's this series of events. I'm planning to run for Empress. I can't say that I'm running until these things have officially taken place and I've been declared to be running. Once I actually get announced, then these things will take place. So he had that kind of, I had provided that timeline of the 14-month period during our early conversations, as well as the background about the organizations I was involved with, both drag and otherwise. And then from that, he then developed his plot line, if you will, an editorial image of what he was going to put together. And we would then know, basically, this is what he's hoping to gather this day. And we went about our show, because most of those times we were either running a show or we were a centerpiece of a show. So our focus is on getting all of that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that really drew me to this film as well is the fact that I had a beginning and an end kind of in mind already, right? Yes. So the way that the court works is they have a coronation where the drag queen who is the figurehead, the face, and the one who chooses all the charities gets elevated.
What if I lost?
Well, I'd still have a documentary.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. What if you'd lost?
Thanks for the spoiler alert, by the way. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. But so there was a coronation, and then I knew that there were all these events kind of leading up to, and Muffy would start running, and we'd kind of have that tension building, and finally we'd have that resolution. And this also gave me the opportunity to weave in the history of DC and some of those other things throughout the storyline, which I think is really important in a documentary, to have that context, and for you to learn something if you're watching it.
Yeah, and so the question I want to go back to, and this is something to do also with, how do you help your subjects be authentic? But so Daniel, as I said, you and I have had long conversations about this, about your kind of lifetime of working through your sexuality and being from a Southern Baptist home. How did you both work together? Were there things that you had to agree on about, what would be included, what wouldn't be included, anything like that? Did you have to arrange any of that to start with?
I don't think there was ever really anything around that.
Because you were just comfortable with whatever came out?
By the time we had gotten to that point in my life,
yes,
when this occurred, though after the filming is when I almost did commit suicide, most of the dark periods were over with. And I had long since got to the point where either you loved me for who I was, or I didn't give a shit about having you in my life. So if someone saw this and was going to have a negative view about me, then I had already come to the conclusion that person didn't need to be in my life to begin with.
Right.
That getting to that point in my life took about 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
But that was already firmly in set at that point. All I was dealing with moving forward was some of the dark spaces and mental health issues that I was confronting at the time. And quite frankly, I'll be confronting for the rest of my life. I think that's one of the things that it's paramount to always make sure that we always remind people that it's okay to not be okay. But no, it was carte blanche license was given to Josh to do whatever.
And like I was saying before about, well, smart choice number one to pick a visually interesting subject, but smart choice number two to pick such an amazing, we call it in filmmaking character, but of course we mean you, but for somebody to have done the kind of internal personal development work that you've done on yourself, Daniel, is extraordinary. And so to me, having that subject as the main character is just fantastic, because of how you've been, it is an amazing amount of work that any human being has to do to navigate all of that. So congratulations on that and on the film.
Thank you.
You know, so
and I will say, certainly from when I watched it, and it's one of the things I noticed to this time, every time I continue to see the film, he did an incredible job of pulling out phrases that have immense meaning to them, to me personally, of my life story. The relationship between my drag mother, Shelby, aka John, and I is one that is beyond description. She and I share a battle with mental illness. I've been extremely blessed professionally. He's had more professional stumbles over the course of time, but we've always been there for one another. Both of us have ended up with the other one in the hospital. So that storyline that we're going to always be there, and the line of that he captures of, you know, we don't choose, because I say we'll always be friends, and no, we'll always be family.
right.
That really is true.
Yes.
And John, particularly over the last 6 months, has really battled some real demons and kind of closed himself down to about 5 or 6 people. And so I've kind of, it's the flip on the head every once in a while. He and I are the support system for the other. But it's the storyline that Josh was able to weave. To me, that's the most amazing piece of the process. If I knew all the stuff that involved from rough cut forward, I might have made a decision early on, if I knew all of that. But it's been an amazing experience.
It's beautiful. I mean, when I went to see the film at Slamdance, I came running in late because I was over the other side of town pitching to HBO. I come running in to see the film. I cried 4 times in the film. That to me is an excellent film. If I'm crying 4 times in a film, I just think that's, and so it's to do with the heart. And I would say that's, what's so magical about the film. So you finished the film, much to Daniel's shock. You finished the film.
There were times where it would have been to my shock too. When you work this long on a project, there are moments where you think, I don't know if I can finish this thing. How am I going to finish this thing?
That's right.
And it was Daniel and my students that helped me, that really pushed me along and gave me that spark to finish it.
Yeah. And then what did you do? Did you like most filmmakers at that point go, oh, I've got a finished film, now what?
Yeah, exactly. I'll enter it into Sundance and we'll see what happens. That was the extent. When I said you need to think through,
that's the only thing they've ever thought about. Oh, I'll enter it into Sundance and then my career will be made.
Right. When I said you need to think about distribution from the beginning, I'm saying that because that's not something that I did.
Right.
I learned that, and I'm doing that for the next one. But so I entered it into a ton of film festivals, and we had some money from Seed and Spark, and so I used that I use that for music and mixing and all that kind of stuff. But then I just started entering it in the film festivals and started racking up those rejections in the beginning. It took me, so this is something that I try to tell everybody who
Ooh.
is making a film, right? You're going to get rejections from film festivals, and that doesn't necessarily mean that your film is bad. It took 9 months for us of submissions for us to finally get into a film festival. And it was a small film festival on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, the Chesapeake Film Festival, that kind of gave us our first shot. But then, so that was from one fall all the way around until middle of summer, right? So like 9 months.
Right.
And then the following fall, it was just film festival after film festival after film festival. Like we started getting into the LGBTQ film festivals and some of the smaller regional film festivals. Then we got into the Virginia Film Festival, which is like a great statewide regional film festival. And I thought, you know, this is great. This is like a great cap to the film festival run. You know, I'll take it and see what we can do from there. We had already started talking to a producer's rep. So I was like, okay, this is great. I was like, I hadn't heard of Slam Dance before, a year before. I'd heard of it, but I didn't really know how big and the importance of it. And so I was like, well, I didn't apply last year. I'm just going to kind of do it on a whim. And I did, and we got in, and, you know, it was a shock and such an amazing moment. I mean, we actually got rejected in the very beginning, got rejected from my local film festival in the small town where I lived, you know? Yep. And, you know, I got feedback from them, and everything that they didn't like was stuff that Slam Dance and the Virginia Film Festival and the other film festivals loved. So
what did they tell you they didn't like about it?
They told me it was too journalistic, that it wasn't they told me they didn't think it was cinematic enough. You know, it's
didn't show enough of the nasty side of drag.
Right. Yeah. Well, so that was actually feedback. So we got feedback from South by Southwest too, right? Because last year they were giving filmmakers feedback, and the feedback that we got from them, we got really good feedback from 2 of the judges, but the 3rd judge said that we weren't showing the raunchiness of drag.
The raunchy, that was the word.
Oh,
but so the thing is,
they wanted a bad attitude and raunchy.
Raunchy, yeah. This group of drag queens, the Imperial Court, is like very, very, Daniel, what's the word I'm looking for? Like elegant. Pomp and circumstance, and like very regal, right?
Regal.
Yeah. Yeah. Now
it's a community-focused regal based on pageantry.
Yes.
Yes. Now there's raunchiness, but it's not like going to, you know, or like RuPaul's Drag Race or something like that. You know, it's a little more traditional, right? So that was actually really good feedback, because we had gotten feedback from judges who liked it and feedback from judges who didn't like it. And so it kind of made us feel like we were somewhat close in that case. But yeah, it was a tough few months, and then everything kind of hit, and it was, then you finally feel vindicated for everything that you've been through.
So when you said you were talking to a producer's rep, was that Ben Yenny?
That was Ben Yenny, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you had met Ben already, and Ben was interested in the film, or what?
Yeah, so one of my executive producers was on a bus with him at, is it AFM? APM?
Yeah, AFM.
Yeah, met him, talked to him.
Doug, right?
Doug was on, yeah. One of our other roommates in Park City.
Yes.
So Doug was on a bus with him, and Doug's working on some other films too. And Doug was like, why don't you submit it to Ben? And I was like, I don't know who this guy is. I'll do it, but like, whatever. Like, you know, I didn't know what a producer's rep did. I didn't know, you know. So I submitted it, and I talked to Ben, and Ben, out of everybody that I've kind of talked to in the film industry so far, I mean, besides Joanne, but involved with this film, Ben was like, complete no bullshit. BS, sorry, I don't know if we can swear or not. But,
you can say bullshit.
Okay.
You like,
complete no bullshit. We'll tell you exactly how it is. He told me, you know, what he liked about it, and where he thought he could take it. but it wasn't like sugar coated or anything like that. And so I signed with him. And before I had,
I just have to say this, but Ben, the reason I love working with Ben is exactly because of that. And all I can say is filmmakers don't like it. They don't.
Former
like
journalists actually
yes.
do.
Yes.
That.
And Daniel is also like on the total no bullshit kind of,
right.
So but it's like, all I can say is that most people in the industry are much more into playing this let's all blow smoke up each other's asses game,
right,
that I have zero interest in.
Right.
And so I can see why that works. So you signed, okay, and then what happened?
I signed. So right before I signed, before I sent the film to a few distributors, just cold.
I'm not hearing.
You can't hear me?
She just got muted. There she go.
Okay.
The volume's gone away.
You're back.
We can hear you.
Something just happened.
We can hear you.
Okay. I don't know what just happened.
You were momentarily muted, but you're back.
Live
Okay,
TV.
we'll keep going and I'll try.
Okay.
And maybe I can listen on your computer, VG. Okay, keep going.
Okay, so before Ben, I cold emailed some distribution companies, like some of the big ones, some of the LGBTQ ones, just who I had heard of, and got no response. A few of them I can tell watched it through Vimeo, but for the most part, got no response. Days after I signed with Ben, we were getting offers from distribution companies to pick up the film. And eventually we ended up going with Mutiny, which is a company that Ben ended up starting. And it's been fantastic ever since. Like, they've really been pushing for us and getting us press and, pitching us everywhere. Joanne, now you are muted. So Muffy, tell me, okay, so was there
sorry,
any...
everybody, I've never had this happen, but I'm going to join on my phone so that I can hear you guys.
Great.
Sorry, it's going to take me a second, I guess.
No problem.
You keep talking, talk about the whole distribution piece, because it's just so interesting, and how that whole thing works. And as I said, most filmmakers, it's never even crossed their mind to think about it. So
sure. Well, so distribution is still a little bit of a mystery to me. I'm still learning, like everything in this process. I've been learning as I've been going, and signing with the distributor was probably the best move that I could make, just because I don't understand distribution at this point.
is my headset over there?
We've been able to get some offers from some smaller LGBTQ streamers. We're still waiting to hear back from some of the larger companies. We started on Alamo Drafthouse. Originally, we were going to do a small theatrical release, because that's what Mutiny promised us. And then COVID hit, and Alamo, Alamo Drafthouse offered us they're doing a theater at home. So basically, rental through them at theatrical prices. And so we went with that, and it's been, we got some really good press out of that as well. We actually did do a screening. So despite everything that's been happening, we did a screening in New Orleans for over a long weekend.
Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, at the Zeitgeist. It was a little, attendance was a little low in the beginning, but we've heard that it really picked up through the weekend. Muffy actually flew down. That was supposed to be Southern Decadence weekend, but because of
Like everything else in the gay community, it's all been killed.
Right. But that was a pretty amazing. That kind of blew me away. That they said they were going to get us into theaters, and they were able to get us into a theater, which was pretty incredible. We didn't have an educational component to our distribution plan, which is one thing that I kind of wished I'd known more about and kind of planned through. So that's something for the next documentary that I'm really going to work on and change. But for this one,
if you had been able to do educational, what do you think you might have done?
So, well, one thing we had talked about doing was setting up screenings at different courts with their local chapters, and doing that. Maybe, I haven't really thought this one through as much, but maybe doing something with some government adjacent organizations, because one of the keys to this documentary, one of the key points is that Muffy during the day works for the federal government, and actually right now is probably one of the busiest people in the federal government, because
right.
Daniel is in unemployment insurance. But yeah, so maybe some screenings.
I just want to acknowledge that, because I've ever since COVID happened, Daniel has been working like around the clock to get money into the hands of Americans, and I really think this is a little moment that we might just say thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Because really, there have been times when I've been like really concerned about how hard you've been working, and I know it's for a very, very important cause, but still, thank you so much.
We appreciate you, Daniel.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a program that I believe deeply in. I've worked in it for 25 years. And we tend to go unnoticed and unseen during the majority of the time, thankfully. It's when everything goes to hell in a handbasket, that's when our program jumps in to try to save the day.
Right. But this issue about the educational distribution, I was just talking to somebody a day or two ago about this, that that's a very umbrella term, but it's sort of just to think about film distribution differently than, let's call what you're doing with Mutiny Pictures commercial distribution. So that's commercial distribution, but educational distribution is where maybe like government adjacent organizations, you would have something like, maybe it's part of their diversity and inclusion training, or some, cultural sensitivity training or something. But there are, many opportunities for income generation for documentary filmmakers in these kind of arenas, whether it's that the venue or the organization that you're showing the film to is paying you to show the film, or whether it's that you can get grant funding to do that kind of work, basically, education, advocacy, training, all of that comes under the umbrella educational distribution. And sometimes it can be used with narrative films as well, depending on the themes that are being looked at, but certainly in the documentary world. Yeah, so for the next one.
Absolutely, yes.
So I don't know what happened here with the computer, so I missed the whole thing. So I think you told the story of what it's been like since I heard up until Alamo Drafthouse, and then I lost the sound. So what do you think is different than maybe you might have imagined with as far as distribution?
Well, so I mean, first of all, when I started, I had no idea how many films I would be competing with. I just went out and started shooting, didn't do any research on distribution, didn't do any research on film festivals. But you get that rejection from Sundance, and they say that there are Like there were 14,000 submissions, right?
Right.
Now those aren't all feature documentaries,
Right.
but that number is insane. I think it's a good thing. Don't get me wrong, I think it's a good thing, but it makes it harder on us as filmmakers, because the film just has to, it has to be perfect to get into something like that, or it has to be put in front of the perfect person, right? Like it doesn't. So, you know, when you're entering film festivals and people are screening your film festivals, you have no idea what they're doing at the same time that they're watching your films, or what's on their mind at the time that they're watching your films. Or so if you get rejected from that, you can't take it personally, because, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that your film is bad. So
and also I would say very importantly is it doesn't mean that your film is not going to make money,
right,
if it didn't get into any film festivals. And I love the story of Doug on the bus bumping into Ben Yenny, because the fact is you didn't get distribution through a film festival.
Right. Yeah.
You got distribution through meeting somebody on a bus who actually could distribute a film.
Right. We actually already had offers from distributors when we got into Slam Dance. We hadn't signed with any distributors yet, but we had gotten offers, and that was all producers rep, and that was what was right for our film, right? Each film kind of charts its own course.
Yes.
I think we had to
go ahead.
Basing off of interactions at film festivals and questions that come along. I think one of the things from my perspective that we were always competing against was the impression that individuals have about drag based upon RuPaul's Drag Race.
Wow, it's such a cultural phenomenon that it's taken over what people think.
And RuPaul's Drag Race, God bless it, God hate it. It is a double-edged sword. There are tens of thousands of individuals who've been exposed to drag that would have never been exposed to drag had RuPaul's Drag Race not been the success it's been.
Right.
But the reality is RuPaul's Drag Race is a reality TV show, and as such, it is edited to make you hate certain characters and like other characters.
Oh yes, that's right.
And the character, and you know, that plays into that raunchy side of drag expectation and the backbiting side of drag expectation. And I think I can't help but from some of the questions and some of the feedback think that that's what some were thinking this film was going to be, when the plot line and the intent of this movie is 180 degrees from everything that's about.
Right.
It's been very heartwarming since the film was put together to see two shows that actually do focus on what I see as a much more closer to this side of drag. And that's the one on HBO, the We're Here. And the one on TLC, the Dragnificent.
I don't know that one.
And both shows are 3 RuPaul's Drag Race drag queens, but it's much more their honest. It is their true them that's depicted there, as opposed to the edited for reality TV version.
Right.
Interacting with folks in small towns, doing things to put people into drag for either the first time or for a time to be on a stage in a production for some kind of a personal transformative reason, whether that be breaking down a stereotype in a community, whether that be bringing and giving someone the wedding that they should have been able to have had, as opposed to the one that they were stuck with, etc. And you know, with the HBO version, it's Shangela, Eureka, and Bob the Drag Queen, and all 3 of those, particularly Shangela and Eureka, were edited into ways that are not depictive of the way they are in real life, and the way they're shown on We're Here is very much how they are in real life. So
nice.
I think,
Yeah. And it's all the similarity with Queen of the Capital is about building community, right?
right.
Creating family, building community, creating safety, creating support, whether it's through money or other ways. And yeah, it's very interesting that given what's happening politically, that something that is very popular is fighting and antagonism, and that warmth and love is not so necessarily what people are going to go. I've run out of time. I really want to open it up for questions. I just got so thrown off by the tech.
Can I add one? Can I add one thing real quickly?
Please.
Another thing that I learned, and I'll keep this real brief, is how much self-promotion that you need to do at film festivals. I thought like you get in and people show up and they watch your film. But what I learned, and I especially learned that from Slam Dance, because they actually had like a breakdown of what we should do, is like once you get in there, you have to be in there and promoting and postering and like telling people to come see your film. Because you could get to a film festival, it could show, and like 2 people could be in the audience.
Oh my God, you guys were monsters about promoting the film during Slam Dance. We joined in the poster wars, and you always had your camera, and everything was another opportunity. By the way, what are you doing with all of that footage?
Oh, I put it together. I did like a little behind the scenes vlog.
Oh, okay.
I'll send it to you.
Oh, for blog. Okay, nice,
Yeah.
nice. If you can put it in the chat.
Sure.
So if you have a question, please come on video and ask. Who would like to ask a question? Diane. Oh, Paprika. Yay. Yeah, go ahead, Diane, and then Paprika. And I don't want to keep you guys too long, especially Daniel has to get back to getting money out to Americans. But go ahead.
So hi, I'm Diane. It's so great to see you guys, and thank you. This is such an inspiring story all the way around. I know Paprika's got a really great question about distribution, and mine goes back to something earlier that you talked about. I'm making a film around, looking at female artists, a documentary about female artists who survive sexual and physical trauma, and how it is that we incorporate it into our work, thereby empowering ourselves and our communities. And given that it's my first feature, one of the things that's happening is that some of my crew are going to be interns and students. And it obviously doing some of these interviews is really touchy. And what I've done thus far is I've been doing the interviews myself, but I'm at a point where we're going to have more crew. And just, do you have any suggestions? Because I literally am going to be working with college and high school students. If you have any suggestions.
I would say the college students could probably handle it. I would give them like give them a trigger warning. I don't know about the high school students, but the college students. I think it's good for them to be in those interviews where things are getting, difficult to listen to. And when we interviewed Shelby, which is Muffy's drag mother, she talked about some really difficult and awful things that she had been through. And one of my students that was there doing the interview actually asked some really insightful, really good questions, because she had been through something similar, or she had anxiety issues that she had dealt with, and she was able to see things that I wasn't able to see. So I would just talk to the students beforehand, talk them through the direction that the interview might go. But I would trust that I tell you, like these students that I have blow me away every semester. And a lot of them have been playing with cameras and doing this kind of stuff since they could talk. I have a 1-year-old, and everything's a telephone to her. Like she holds and now all telephones have cameras and everything. So I would just trust in the students and just give them a heads up.
Okay, yeah, because part of it also is a big piece of it is really wanting the subjects to be comfortable. That's creating a really safe environment. So
right,
yeah,
well, a small crew. I would say too, like keep it as small as possible.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Paprika, look at the beautiful sunshine. Where are you?
Oh, I'm in Colorado.
Colorado, nice.
Yes, yes. In fact, I'll take you guys down while I'm talking.
Nice.
So congratulations on the Mutiny Pictures distribution deal. I have talked with Ben and Mutiny, and they seem wonderful. I've been seeing the whole incarnation of your promotion and press that they've done for you. Just curious to know if it was international distribution, or if they're doing it regionally or just North American, how your distribution is looking for worldwide.
They're doing, we started out with them just doing North America. And then Ben, because he was our producer's rep first, was also pitching it to other distribution companies worldwide. This was before they formed Mutiny. Mm-hmm. But as Mutiny's kind of grown, we've just kind of gone with them to do both US and international.
So the worldwide, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, and I just didn't know how many pictures they are representing right now, and if that's affecting your particular deal. Since you guys were the first, I know they launched with you.
So I don't know off the top of my head how many they've picked up, but actually being the first was a really good thing because it helped us get press. So we were mentioned in all of their press.
Yes.
They got write-ups in Variety and Deadline and all of that because we were the first documentary and the first film that they had signed. We were mentioned in all of those as well.
So it's like publicizing a film, but also publicizing the launch of a distribution company.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
And they've, I know some of the big streamers have wanted bigger aggregators, but Mutiny has been able to connect us with those and has gone through those to get our film in front of those big streamers. So, if there's something because of their size that they can't do, I've personally felt like they've been able to kind of work around it. Like Joanne said, like they're no bullshit, which I really appreciate.
Okay, well, great. Well, I just wanted to give you a moment of outdoor space. Here's a little creek.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Just to breathe deeply, feel the sun. Woo. All right, thanks so much. And I'm wondering, can I contact you?
Absolutely, yes.
Directly?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
So does anybody else have a question before we send Daniel back to the salt mines? Okay, so I just want to thank you guys so much. I hope this has been a little relief of all the pressure, Daniel, and not just more pressure. Really appreciate your time. It's just
not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Josh, between your full-time job, making your next film, promoting this film, having a 1-year-old, all of that. It's just really, really great. And I don't think we're going to be in Park City again this year, but soon enough.
And can I say we're on Amazon if anybody would like to watch the film. Right now it's up for purchase, and eventually it'll be up for rental fairly soon, I think. So
it's up for purchase. What do you mean?
So it's so we're selling it digitally on Amazon right now.
Yes.
It's not on Amazon Prime. We haven't done the free or these subscription based, right?
But isn't that the same as renting it? Or are you saying when we pay that money, we own it?
You own it. You can
you can watch it multiple times. All that stuff. Yeah.
Through Amazon, you can watch it whenever you want.
And own it forever.
Yes.
Yes, and it's great to be able to support filmmakers by spending, whatever the massive amount is of $5 or something. So, but thank you again, and we'll be in touch. We'll be talking soon.
Thank you.
Guys, bye. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.